next guest is none other than the man himself. It's Mr. Dan Sultan. Good morning, my bros.
Good morning. How you going?
Yeah, good, man. Good. How are you?
Nice to see you.
I know. Too much social media chat, not enough facial recognition.
Oh, too much social media. Full stop.
How does it?
Everyone needs to, yeah.
Full stop.
Anti-social media.
Oh, let's bash it.
It's like anything. It just depends how you use it. Anyway, keep it light.
Nah, keep
Nice
it.
chirpy little number you played of mine before.
What do you?
Early in the morning.
Where'd that song come from?
Oh, that came from being demonized by the media, bro. Which personally I have been a couple of times, and something that happens to us regularly and something that happens to our men regularly. No one really talks about it. But our men are demonized. We're seen as, this bad boy. I know it's PG, so I won't say the next word, but, it's rubbish, Yeah, and it was, pretty difficult the few times that it's happened to me, and it's something that happens to a lot of us, and it's appalling. No one talks about it, and we don't even really talk about it that much. You know what I mean? And it's sort of difficult. I think it can be pretty tricky depending on what they're saying or depending on what someone has said about you. All comes out in the wash though, and it all gets sorted out in the end.
Yeah, but it's tiring, isn't it, when it takes a long time, and not a lot of us have a public voice like yours. So it's nice to hear that you go. It's tiring,
but it's also depending on what it is, bro. It can be pretty terrifying. I mean, I got kids. I got a young family. And I'm a hardworking person who's providing for my family, just like a lot of other people. And for one reason or another, it can get a bit difficult every couple of years. So, I only wrote one song last year, and it was a really important song for me to write, and it was pretty cathartic, and it was a nice thing to do,
Love it.
Stay creative, turn it into, if you're able to. That's something I feel really lucky about, is that that I am creative and I'm able to, I like songs, and I feel lucky that I'm able to write them, and particularly if it's something, if it's about something that can help me get through something,
Have you always written music that's helped you, or have you lowered that priority and more so, how do you juggle as a mainstream artist, as a really loved artist? Do you play to the crowd more? Do you because that song does feel like it's something just for you and stuff what you think kind of thing?
Yeah, look, I think you can sort of there's different ways of going about it. I mean, that song's pretty brutal, and it's obviously pretty specific. The newsman from the gutter knocks at my door, and knows that I'm not home. It's the opening line. I mean, that happened, I was in Adelaide and my wife was home, and it was 8:30 at night, and a gutter journalist showed up on the door, and my daughter was asleep in bed, and it was absolutely traumatic,
How do they get? Oh, mate, rookie question. How do they get your address? Just people talk, neighbours talk, or something. It's just ridiculous.
Talk, people talk, friends talk.
Yep.
Anyway, I'm not really too worried about that anymore. Yep. Last year cleared a lot of things up for me, so that's good. But so that's obviously a pretty direct reference to my story. You know what I mean? But then I've written a lot of songs that are a lot broader, which it could be anyone's if they liked it, of course. But it could be it could be anyone's. It could be someone's wedding song or something like that. But I've written a song that's going to be on my next album, which is about something that my wife and I have been through, and having our own, really locking down and being really strong within our home and within our hearts for each other, which I think a lot of people can relate to with their families and, you know, their loved ones. And, you know, so look, there's different ways you can go about it. You can be really just straight up, like that opening line of of Tarred and Feathered, and, you know, it's not really, you know, there's no ambiguity there. Or, you know, you can sort of ride it a bit more, and, you know, I mean, ride it, you know, RIDE, and write it. But, you know, you can write it a bit more and have it sort of just a bit, you know, a bit broader. There's different ways of going about it, you know, and it's fun. It's enjoyable for me. I enjoy the wordplay, and I enjoy the sort of the gymnastics of it, you know what I mean, and the emotional gymnastics, but also the, you know, the intellectual and artistic, you know, sort of hoops and, you know, little obstacle courses that get set through writing poems and songs and story, and, you know, yeah, it's good fun.
You've spent a fair chunk of the last 2 years gallivanting around this beautiful country we got. Is that really important for you as a First Nations man to get out on just any country, and hopefully when people get some time, well, what does it mean to you and for your family as well, and take little Lena and out and about and spend some time together as a new family? But that connection to country is something that non-Indigenous people, I guess, are really curious about. Does it work for you?
Look, it works for me. I don't know if it works for me because I'm Aboriginal, but I know it works for me because that's how I feel. I mean, I think it probably is because of that, you know what I mean? But I got nothing to reference it against, you know what I mean? So, and I personally think, you know, so I suppose, you know.
Yeah, back in your white days. What was
yeah, whether I'm identifying or not, anyway, that's a recent thing. Each to their own. But, yeah, so look, I got nothing to reference it against. I mean, for me personally, it's pretty important, you know. We were able to get back to Central Australia last year and I was able to take the family there. And, you know, I got to meet a lot of family and got to see a lot of family as well. You know, so that's really quite special. And I think in such a difficult year like last year was, I mean, and, you know, it turns out this year for a lot of people, you know what I mean? Everyone was sharing this one really crazy thing, and everybody had their own things going on as well, you know. So I know we certainly did, and, you know, so in such a crazy year to be able to do something like that was pretty special.
Yeah, man.
You know, but you know what is country? I mean, it's sort of such, you know, we don't all feel the same way about everything. You know what I mean? We all come from different parts of this continent, and we all come from different languages and cultures, and, you know, we all grew up in different houses. You know, so look, my people are from Central Australia, we're Eastern Islander and Gurindji, but my grandmother, you know, ended up on Bari country up at One Arm Point, and she's buried there. And recently we were able to go up there as well. We didn't get to One Arm Point because communities are still closed there, of course, with everything that's going on. But we were very close to there, and just to be able to take my child and my wife and our children to that country where my grandmother, my mother's mother is buried, you know, I mean, that's very special, you know, and that's a part of the world that's always called out to me. And when I found my grandmother's grave, and I should say when I was shown my grandmother's grave by the old man up there, you know, I realised what that calling was, you know. You know, it was her, you know, getting me to come there, and, you know, and now I've found it, and now I know where it is, and, you know, my kids know they're not going to grow up not knowing, you know, and I can tell my mum, and I can tell all her sisters and her brothers and my brother, and, you know, it's cousins, and, you know, I mean, you know, the list goes on. There's a lot. I
was going to say, where are you going to stop here, Braz?
Yeah, well, you know, just tell everyone, you know, I wrote a song
tell
about
it all.
Yeah.
Hey, Braz, I got some questions coming through, which is really cool. It's a live show, so people can submit questions, and I've got a
Oh,
few.
no.
I've got a few here to chew through, mate. If you don't mind, I was at your Midnight Oil gig with some other friends here that are on the show. So a question from them. Keen to hear about your journey with Midnight Oil and Peter Garrett. Did they seek you out? Did they have strong ideas about how it could work for Makarrata, or was the project driven more strongly by First Nations artists reflecting on what was delivered in the concerts? Did it hit the mark with aims of collaboration?
Yeah, look, that's a big question. I'll just answer it from a personal point of view. I actually got a call like the day before they needed me to go into the studio. And I went in and recorded it. That was in like November of 2018, I think.
Yeah, right.
Or 19. I can't remember. Anyway, it was a long time ago.
Yeah.
and they had a couple of songs there, and it was open to co-writes, and I changed a little bit, but I didn't change enough, I felt, to warrant, necessarily being a writer. I just sort of advised on a couple of things. And look, I love Midnight Oil, and Jim Magini's, who's guitar player, is a really good mate of mine, and we're all mates. Me and Jim are pretty good mates, And as far as the tour was concerned, I mean, I was umming and ahhing about whether I should do it or not, and here he is anyway. The late, great late Gadinsky was, pretty adamant that I should do it, and it wasn't Midnight Oil that I was humming and ahhing about. I was humming and ahhing about everything, whether I wanted to continue to do this kind of thing or not.
Yeah, right, right.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty rough last year, bro. You know what I mean? Anyway.
Was that your first live performance with Midnight Oil since having a break?
Since having a break, yeah. So,
pretty public,
we played the Enmore.
Oh, yeah.
Last time I actually saw MG, he came to that. He always came to things. I mean, when I first got out of rehab, he came to sound check of the first show I did, and then when everything got sorted out and, the sort of truth came out about everything last year, he came to the Enmore,
Wow.
And then he actually passed away a couple of days after that, which was a bit of a shock. But just getting back to the question, on the road, mate, Troy Casadale's there. I mean, Alice Skye, a great lineup. But I was basically hanging out with Troy Casadale, Martin and Jim from the Oils, and we were just talking about guitars, for a month or 6 weeks or something like that, So it was It was great. I got up and sang a couple of songs at the start, and then I just sat down and watched Midnight Oil all night. And then I got up at the end and sang a couple of songs at the end. And then in the meantime, we wake up in the morning and have a coffee and talk about, L series Strats and, golden era pre-war Martins and, all that great stuff, So I had a great time. Look, a lot of people aren't I don't speak for everybody, I speak for myself. I had a really great time. I thought it was done really well. I think they're really, really good folks, who have been fighting the good fight for a very long time. And, I don't let too much sway them, you know what I mean?
Appearing on Play School, making a kids album and being an ambassador for children's grounds, very kiddies. Were you always interested in kid stuff? Was it something that got triggered more so when you knew you were having a bub of your own?
Oh yeah, not necessarily, I mean, kids are great. I mean, I worked at an after school program before. I was a kid for a while,
Yeah.
I mean, it's good fun, it should be good fun. I actually decided to do a kids album before we knew before we got pregnant or anything like that. But the thing is with the kids album for me was I'd just been to rehab and I'd just gotten sober, and I'm now just over 3 years sober now. So it's still early days, but on track and doing good. And and I wasn't very satisfied with my record before that. I was satisfied with the album, an album called Killer, the album itself, but I felt like it, I felt pretty unfulfilled with how it was accepted or not accepted. You know, I felt like it was kind of overlooked in a lot of ways, you know. And then you just kind of just got to, you know, I took it pretty hard, to be honest. You know, I need to just do something different, bro. As an artist, you know, if I get comfortable, then it makes me a bit uncomfortable. You know what I mean? So, you know, I need to do something different. So I just try something completely different, you know. And so I did a kids album. I also did just a kind of acoustic, you know, stripped back album of my past catalogue as well. So in 2019 at the Arias, I was nominated for 2 different albums in 2 different categories, you know, which is something that I'd never done before and something that a lot of people have never done. So it was a good way. It was a good sort of, you know, change it up moment. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And, you know, Gnarly and Friends, the kids album, did really well. You know, it's we're talking about making it a stage show. There's been books, you know, won the ARIA for kids album that year. You know, went number one on a kids album.
That's a major.
You know, it was my first number one and could be my only number one, you know. It's about fighting gorillas, you know what I mean? We'll see what this next record's like, but yeah, at least I can say I've got a number one.
Oh, mate, I've done a few kids discos over the break, a lot of for Watherong communities, and mate, your album has saved me many a times.
Good.
For getting it's a definite D floor filler for the under 10s group.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What, Gnarly?
Yeah, Gnarly. It's a D. Yeah. It's in my D floor filler album. So just go, yeah, mate. You feel the D floor of 8-year-olds like that.
Yeah.
Like that.
What song?
The farting one, mate. You got it.
Windy.
I think farts in songs is really powerful.
Relatable. You know, it's what we were talking about at the start of the interview. You know what I mean? You can get really specific with something, or you can like make it a bit broad, and you know, and you can kind of maybe bring a few more people in. You know, and
yeah, fart's a fart. I mean,
you don't get any broader than farting. You know?
I love it. Apparently, my wife thinks she doesn't fart if you ask her. I love it, so I ask her all the time. A question around sobriety, and congratulations. There's been a few people saying, mate, just well done. Congratulations. How did you do it, and how important are friends and family as a support? Okay, yeah. So, thank you. Yeah. Thanks for your well wishes. I got a lot of well wishes when it happened too. See, that's the thing, man. It's a sort of a double-edged kind of vibe. You know what I mean? But this, you know, these two things aren't necessarily mutually exclusive. When I had a show up in Cairns, it was the 2nd of June, 2018, and I was horrors, you know, and I was blind drunk and falling off the piano stool and all that kind of stuff. Anyway, Cairns Post just went mental on it, which then got picked up by, you know, a lot of press, you know. Wow. And, you know, it was in the papers for a few days, you know. It was like pretty slow news days, obviously, you know. And even I even saw an article with my photo in it in the Australian talking about, you know, should there be as many artist grants for Indigenous people? Wow. You know, if this is what they're going to do with it, you know. By the way, I'd won a bunch of ARIAs by this stage, and, you know, had you know, really high charting records and really critically acclaimed records. But, you know, because I had a drunk show, you know, then that just counts all that out. So that's the gutter press stuff that I'm talking about, right? That's the demonization that I'm talking about. You got to be twice as good to get half as much, right? And you got to, you know, stuff up half as much to get twice the condemnation, right? And that's just what we have in this country, whether you're in the public eye or not, right? So that was sort of the first big round of that kind of press demonization. Now, that being said, if it wasn't so public and so embarrassing, because it was really, really embarrassing, you know, then would I have gotten sober at that time? Would that have sparked me into it? I don't know if it would have, if I'm being totally honest. Or maybe I would have just been in denial for a bit longer or a lot longer, or maybe I wouldn't be here. I know that my now wife wouldn't have
stuck around too much longer at that point. And I know that, you know, if that happened, then I wouldn't have my daughter and I wouldn't have our son who's on the way in June, November. So, you know, it's kind of this weird, you know, I can make the best of it, you know. That doesn't take away the fact that, you know, the way I was treated in the press was absolutely horrendous. But the thing is, if you're a bit smart and if you're a bit successful and a bit handsome, you know what I mean, then they don't like you very much. You know what I mean? They don't want you to be too smart. Handsome's all right, just as long as you don't talk too much. You know what I mean?
Oh,
so, yeah, look, and as far as family and friends, I mean, they talk about in AA, which I'm not a huge participant in. I mean, I go to meetings, you know, I haven't been to a meeting in a while, but you know, I don't do steps or anything like that. And look, I may do steps, done a few steps, but I don't do the steps. It's sort of, you know, sort of an all-in thing.
Yeah.
I think I decided early on that, you know, drugs and alcohol were never my whole life, you know. So I'm not going to make sobriety my whole life or AA or NA my whole life. I mean, you know, that's just me. I mean, there's a lot of people out there who, you know, everybody does it differently, you know. But one thing that sort of really started to clear things up for me really early, within the first few months of me getting sober, you know, they talk about a higher power, you know. I'm not, look, I'm very spiritual, and I know my spirit, and I know, you know, we spoke about country earlier, and, you know, that's something that's just innate for a lot of us, you know what I mean? A lot of people, you know, but I think particularly living on the landmass in which, you know, your family has lived for tens and tens of thousands of years, just thousands and thousands of generations. There's something that comes along with that can't be replicated or can't really be explained. It can only be known. And, you know, the most someone might be able to understand is that they're never really going to understand, you know what I mean? But but I am very spiritual, you know, but not particular. I don't identify with any particular denomination or anything like that. But they talk about a higher power, and it's a higher power of your choosing. Now, my higher power, I decided. Well, I didn't decide. It was obvious that my higher power early on was the love that my family and I share. Now that means concern when someone's not doing well. That means pride when, you know, they're kicking goals. That means everything that comes. That means frustration when they're, you know, everything. You know what I mean? That love that my family and I have and we share, regardless of what's going on, you know, whether we're talking to someone or not talking to someone or whatever, you know, or just, you know, having a good day or a bad day, there's that constant, you know, which is that love. I mean, that's the higher power that's what I saw as my higher power. And once I've been sober for 3 months, and then we got pregnant with my daughter, and she was actually due 12 months to the day of that show in Cairns, you know. Now, look, she arrived a week early, but that's just because she thinks she knows everything and she tries to do everything before she's ready. But you know, it's pretty great the way things line up. You know, she's very much like, you know, she's got a lot going on, you know. And her brother's due, you know, pretty much a year to the day after my wife and I got married. So our kids are, you know, pretty cluey, I think, you know, in that way. So, you know, it was, you know, it's not easy. I think about it. I think about it most days. Some days it's easy, some days it's difficult. What I find, I don't miss the benders or the horrors, you know. You know, walking down the street on a really nice day, and there's a beer garden, you know, and people having a chat and having a catch up and having a beer, you know, and it might turn into a bigger night, it might not, whatever. I mean, that's sort of when I miss it, you know. With me, it sort of would turn into a big night, you know. that's sort of when I miss it a bit. And my wife, who didn't need to like I did, but she just out of support, you know, she's pretty amazing. She doesn't drink anymore either.
Wow.
And we've yeah, we've spoken about that a couple of times. Just like, oh yeah, if there was a time, it'd be now, and it'd be over there, you know.
Yeah.
But you know, look, that's just not the deal for me.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
I kind of, you know, I saw a thing recently, Joe Perry and Steven Tyler actually just online talking about how they got sober, and you know, and I could really relate to it. I think Joe Perry was saying, you know, he thought that it'd be nice to be an old man and have a nice sip of something on the veranda, you know, at the end of the day. And I mean, it's just not on the cards.
Yeah.
You know, you got so many tickets, you know, and I've punched all my tickets, bro. You know.
Yeah.
And that's just where it's at. And look, for me, it's if I had a drink today, I'd have to jump through thousands of hoops mentally to make it make sense and make it okay, you know. And it wouldn't be okay, but you know, if I was to make it make sense and make it okay in my mind, I'd have to go to some pretty crazy lengths mentally to be able to do that.
Is that a new thing?
No, but for me not to have a drink, it's a no-brainer.
Yeah.
You know, so look, you know, for me it's either have a drink and drink alcohol and, you know, pretend like I can do it like normal people, and I lose everything, you know, and I have, or I have everything and lose the drink. You know, the only thing I lose by not drinking is alcohol.
How'd you find? I mean, you haven't been on a bucket load of tours or gigs since being sober, and what's the environment like out there for a sober artist? How many, you know?
Yeah.
Was Garrett on the Prosecco's and, you know?
Oh yeah, no, it's fun. I mean, people, some people drink, some people don't. You know, it's absolutely fine.
Yeah, cool.
I mean, there's a lot of. I'll just say it. There's a lot of misconceptions about rock and roll and the music industry, and you know, if usually, bro, if someone's talking about how wasted they are, or if someone's talking about how I'm so, you know, I'm so wild and all that kind of stuff, they're full of it.
I know.
Because the people who are wild and the people who are really having a hard time, don't talk about it. You know what I mean? So if you got to do a hashtag about how crazy you are and all that kind of stuff, it's just you know, it's I don't know, each to their own, mate. But I see it as false, basically. So look, to answer your question, it's fine out there, bro. There's a lot of people in the industry who are sober, you know. There's this misconception about the music industry, and there's this misconception about Aboriginal people, and particularly men, right? Most people I know, Aboriginal artists or otherwise, are fine with alcohol. It's not something that affects a lot of people, you know. Drug and alcohol addiction, you know. What is prevalent is it shows up when there's been a lot of trauma, you know what I mean? And it's a way of dealing with those things, you know, and you know, so that's where things can come into it. And there's a lot of our people that go through a lot, you know, due to the way things are set up in society, you know. So, you know, that can go through a lot. But, you know, I know a lot of people, and you know a lot of people in the entertainment industry, and we both know a lot of black fellas as well. You know, people are fine with it. You know what I mean? Most people are fine with it. And as far as the industry is concerned and touring and all that kind of stuff, I mean, you know, people are professionals, you know, people work, you know. I've just got a new band together and a new crew, you know. All I need now is to be able to go out and play some shows. But, you know, and I've, you know, it's a dry show, you know, and it's a dry crew and it's a dry band. Now, look, I'm not going to get woolly with anyone if you know, we have a great festival, and, you know, at the end of the festival, a few days, you know, did some great shows that, you know, they want to relax, and, you know, that's, you know. But as far as working's concerned, I actually went on the road with Paul Kelly. This is a couple of years before I got sober. And, you know, I learned a lot from that tour. You know, one time I actually had to get an Uber to the airport, you know, because I just wasn't downstairs for a lobby call. You know what I mean? And it's, you know, this is the time. We're here to work, you know.
Yeah.
You know, if it's 8 o'clock, it's 8 o'clock. It's not 8:01. It's not 8:02.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, I learned a lot from that.
Did you get told?
Really
did you get told?
Did
you get told? Did you get told something? How did you learn? Did someone go, "Oi, Dan, ain't cool. 8:02 ain't 8," or did you just feel it? You get on the you get on the plane.
Mate, when you're in an Uber and everyone else has already left in the bus.
Some people don't know. Some people don't know. They're like, "Oh, I'll make it."
Well, I arrived on time. The thing is, I arrived at the same time as they did, but it was the principle of the thing, you know?
Yeah.
And it was pretty loud and clear, you know? No one has to say much. The thing about Paul, he's really great. I mean, he'll make a point, but he won't, you know, I never felt, he was never cruel or mean about anything. You know, if something needs to be said, I mean, he's a great band leader, you know, he'll say it. That's why his ship is, you know, that's why he runs that's how his ship's so tight, you know, he'll do what needs to be done, but he's not going to be an asshole about it. Sorry, PG. Sorry. Right. He's not going to be, you know, he's not going to make you feel shame about it, you know.
Good. Tell us a little bit about your recent pairing up with Fender before we wrap up and let you get back to your day, mate, and go see some of that sunshine. Look, it's great. It's great that a brand's interested in you. You obviously know a lot about Fender, and tell us about that collab.
So yeah, I've been working with Fender a couple of years, hanging out with Fender a bit. A mate of mine, Heath, blows at Fender here in Sydney. We just caught up, you know, we've been meaning to catch up for a while, sort of collab stuff, you know. And he said, "Oh, look, we'd like to be doing some stuff for NAIDOC. You know, what do you think? You know?" And we came up with a few ideas. One of the ideas is I got Nia McLeod and Otis Carey, great artists from northern New South Wales, Bundjalung country. Well, they're living up there, and to paint a Stratocaster and an Acoustasonic Fender guitars. So Fender, there you go. Oh, look at that! You're just too flash, bro.
Oh, no,
Fender, but you know, and Heath was just like, "Yep, whatever you need." So they sent him those guitars. And Otis is the one with the sort of shell pink and the larger,
the top one,
graphic, the top one, and Nia's is you know, the black and brown and the bit finer stuff. And you know, Heath was all over it, and Fender they were all over it, and we launched it on Monday. And Fender put it up on their Facebook worldwide, which is great. And they're going to be running ads on Instagram worldwide all this week. So keep an eye out for that.
So it's competition. People can buy this, or can you buy it, or is it just competition run?
It's an auction. Yeah. So you can buy it, but you got to pay for it. Anyway, it's all proceeds going towards Children's Ground, which are a really important organisation, which basically educates the educators, you know.
We've got a few teachers in our RGR family, the Really Good Radio family, and we're always talking about how important it is that teachers use their channel to press through. So, well,
you know, founder and chairman of Children's Ground, William Tilmuth, you know, and I'm paraphrasing here, but he said something to me a little while ago, which has really stuck with me. You know, it's all very well to get our kids ready for school, and obviously that's important, but you know, we need to be getting our schools ready for our kids, you know.
Yeah.
And that can mean different things in different places. There's a lot of different cultures in this country and on this continent, and there's a lot of different nations, and that means different things in different places. I grew up in the inner city. I had issues, you know. I had, you know, horrible racism, you know, by the establishment and the institution, you know, not necessarily by individuals, but just the, you know, I mean, you know what I'm talking about. And then, so it can mean something for me in my circumstances, going to Footscray City Secondary College, which was actually a pretty good school, but there was a couple of things that was a bit, could have been a bit better. I also went to high school in Cairns at Cairns State High School, and, there was it got a bit real a couple of times up there,
I've only heard about the wild, wild north.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that must be the equator, right? I don't know. I like it.
Last stop.
I like it. No, I like it. But, it was pretty real. Look, I grew up in Fitzroy, and by that point, I'd gone to primary school in North Melbourne, and my mother worked for the Australian Conservation Foundation and land councils, and, my father had worked for the Aboriginal Legal Service, and I get up to Cairns, and you got teachers saying Abo, and I'm just like, so... Yeah. Anyway, it was a bit real, but it can also mean something different in places like Yuendamu, where you and I have been together, and I spent some formative years of my life out at Yuendamu when I was little, and it's about just places, community and stuff. It's about language, is a big one. Language, and then the cultures of those people and where they're from, and basically that being at the fore of someone's education and development. The thing is with genocide, bro, it's not just about the massacre. It's then what follows it for hundreds of years, which is taking people's identity away and taking people's language and culture. The way you strip someone of that, then someone grows up and they have issues with their own identity, which forces, which can have lasting effects on their self-esteem. And then along with that comes things like addiction and the way we treat other people, and something that's really prevalent with our people and our community is the tall poppy stuff, and they call it crabs in a bucket, or there's a million sayings, you know what I mean, and that comes along with just people being really unwell with themselves, and you win too many awards, or you're on telly a bit too much, or you're a bit too handsome, it can stir some really ugly things up in some people, and not just white people, So the thing is, Children's Ground addresses a lot of things early,
Right.
and it's extremely important, and I'm really proud to be a part of it. And teaming up with Fender, who have got millions and millions of followers on social media. And, everyone knows the Fender Stratocaster changed the world, man. Telecaster's the coolest thing to ever exist. The thing is, money's really important, and it's raising a lot of money already just a few days in. The auction goes until the 25th of this month of July. I should say you can go to my socials or Nia McLeod's or Otis Carey's or Children's Ground to bid on these. Look, the money's one thing, but for me personally, I think for all of us, I think raising awareness is the main thing. And on a global level, you've got Otis is a pro surfer, and he does a lot of work with Billabong. So Billabong have shared it on their socials, So we've got some really global heavy hitters, and it's about raising awareness about what's going on. For me, that's where the real power is in this, because in this country, I think people know, but there's a huge amount of apathy. It's not ignorance, it's apathy. And I think getting it out there on a big international level, where the power lies. With this.
Talked about it earlier this week as well on this show, just so many people flicked around the weather report from Channel 10, like it's just the most amazing thing. But we don't have the platforms, so the people that have got the platforms have got a very, very strong responsibility to change people's thinking.
Yeah, I think it's really great. I think, and it's people power. The thing is, when you live in a place like Australia, it's like people blaming the Prime Minister for stuff. It's like, well, actually, if they thought that there were votes in what we cared about and what we thought was important, then they would be doing it.
Yeah.
But there obviously aren't votes in keeping kids out of detention centres. And there obviously aren't votes about trying to, curb or put an end to Aboriginal deaths in custody. And there's obviously not votes in this and in that, you know what I mean? So where does that bring us? Well, then that brings it on to us. And I don't mean you as an individual or me as an individual. I mean us together. We live in one of the most highly functioning democracies on the planet, and if there were votes in this kind of stuff, then we'd be doing it. So that's where the power to the people comes into it, right? It wasn't like it was some legislation that said you have to put these names up. It was because Channel 10 read the room, and people are sitting around and they call it NAM, and they talk about Gadigal land, and it's becoming more and more, in the mainstream vernacular, non-Indigenous, non-Aboriginal, way of referring to these places. So they read the room and they went with it, and that's because that's what people want, So I think it's really great, and
bang on.
I think if we stay true to what we believe in, what we feel is right, then things are moving in the right direction, But
I think so too.
It can just be really, really full on. A lot of people just find it really jarring as well. They get really defensive. I mean, it when you talk to someone, who isn't Aboriginal, and you talk about this being your country, Well, where's my country? Where do I? And it's like, this is what I'm talking about. When you go to the place where your family's been for thousands of generations, and you feel the ground on your feet, and you feel the water, in your mouth and in your body, when you drink it and you breathe that air in, that's something that's pretty amazing. Bro, I've been to Ireland, where my father's family's from, and parts of my mother's side of the family too, and I felt the exact same thing. It's a really beautiful thing. And again, it's apathy. It's not ignorance. You can do it. You can find this stuff out. It might be a bit of research. It might be a bit of waiting on results. If you do a DNA swab or whatever it is, there's just ways of finding this stuff out. And either you want to find that out or you don't, And I'm not going to tell anyone that they have to want it. People can do whatever they want. It's none of my business. But don't tell me that this isn't my country.
But I reckon, yes, bang on, man. But I reckon if people are stirred and they're troubled about that they don't know and they're confused, it's a good way to go about it.
Well, it is a good way to go about it. It's better than just getting defensive and and just arguing, with someone and trying to tell them about their own country, That's embarrassing as well. It's less embarrassing than doing that.
Gringy Freedom Festival, I'm going up with my lovely wife, Carissa. You going to go up?
I can't go anywhere, bro. I can't go to the shops.
Yeah.
You're lucky I'm not wearing a mask. I'm up in Sydney. I'm in Gadigal, so
rats.
I'm not going up. I'd like to be going up.
Yeah.
When were we? When I was there, 50 years. Right. 5 years ago. Yeah.
I saw your brother's pics. I didn't know you were there. It's absolutely beautiful.
Yeah, I was there 5 years ago, and I was there.
Yeah.
I think 5 years before that, and been up there a few times. Look, I'd love to go. We were actually sort of in that part of the world in September, but we didn't actually make it. We just kept sort of moving south. But I'd love to go and take the family one day, but I don't think it's going to be this year.
And a few people have asked, when can we grab your new album?
When it's finished, I got a producer that lives in Melbourne. When it's done. We got the first thing. We've recorded quite a bit of it. We got the first single pretty much ready to go, actually. I'm not going to say when that's going to be out. We've got a time period that we're talking about, but we're just with all these shows being postponed. We might just wait a little bit and just try to time it a little bit better. You know, we'll see how we go. I haven't actually spoken to my label about that, so if they're watching, we'll talk later today.
Cool.
Yeah, but yeah, you know, we're going to be releasing music this year. The album proper won't be out this year, I don't think. I think the album will probably be out next year. But we're going to release. Start releasing music this year. Yeah.
Dan, you've been super generous with your time. I'm rapt to have a chat with you, and I'm sure the listeners were really appreciative of you sticking around a bit longer than what they expected and what they're used to. So, pleasure chatting, bros.
Yeah, you too, bro. I was just did a bit of tally earlier, a bit of live TV, and they had to cut me off. I was on fire. I just kept going. I just want to keep going. I just noticed the time now.
What did you do?
Oh, I was just talking about children's ground. And another thing.
Before I go, just one more thing.
Yeah, no, before I go,
just one more.
Like, oh, anyway, bro, it was on NITV. Anyway, bro, we're going to go. And, you know, they had something lined up. It was a cooking segment or something like that. And I was carrying on. Yeah, anyway, all good.
I love it. Braz, have a good NAIDOC week, whatever that means to you. But
yeah, you too.
Yeah, we'll speak again, man. I appreciate you jumping on.
All right, Troy. Catch you, bro.
See you later.
See you, man.